Good morning, everyone. It is good to be here together. Welcome to our Zoom worship service. We're going to take just a moment to acknowledge that the land on which our homes and our church and the Yellow House were built was not uninhabited when European settlers arrived here with their ideas of conquest and ownership. For those of us who live in Moscow, Pullman, or other nearby communities, we live on the ancestral homelands of the Nimipu, called the Nez Perce by the French-speaking traders, the Palouse, and the Shitshumsh, called the Coeur d'Alene. If you're joining us from another place, I encourage you to discover who inhabited or moved through the place where you now live in the times before colonization and genocide, and check on where they are now. We pause and remember that we live on ground that is sacred, ground that was stolen, and ground that cries out for justice and responsible stewardship. May our remembering help us find the courage to do our part to restore wholeness to the earth and all her peoples. And now let's join our voices together for words of welcome, a chalice lighting, and our sung affirmation. Whoever you are, wherever you've come from, whatever your beliefs, whomever you love, and however bumpy your life's journey, know that you are welcome here. We're hoping that everyone has a chalice or a candle to light and something to light it with. Let's take a moment and do that together.
We're the Stewarts. I'm Lena.
I'm Julia.
And I'm Lex. In the light of truth and the warmth of love, we gather to seek and seek to share.
From all that dwell below the skies, let songs of hope and love arise. Let beauty, truth, and good be sung in every land by every tongue.
So this morning's service was planned around the concept of wintering, with inspiration from a book by Katherine May. May describes wintering at various times as the active acceptance of sadness, as a way to get through tough times by chilling, hibernating, healing, regrouping. She also describes it as involuntary, lonely, and deeply painful. This week has given us another dose of in-our-face ugliness, though, so the task of our time together has shifted a little. On top of the challenges of pandemic and the wearing loneliness of quarantine, on top of the grief caused by loss upon loss and disappointment after disappointment, we're required to integrate the trauma of seeing the Capitol building invaded and defiled. To me, the instigators resembled nothing so much as football fans flipping cars after their team lost. But they were egged on by a president, and 5 people were killed. And we have been forced to reckon with the truth that our democracy is more fragile than we'd like. I briefly considered a pivot to a fiery call to action sort of a service, but the truth of it is I'm just so very tired. And I don't know what action to call you to. I'm outraged, but there have been so many outrageous developments in the past few years that I have outrage fatigue. I am traumatized, but there have been so many ruptures and disasters that I have trauma fatigue. This is without a doubt a crisis in our democracy, but I also have crisis fatigue. I don't have fiery in me right now. What I have is this mantra that I've returned to over and over again all winter long, that rest is resistance. So instead of fire, here's an invitation. Bring your tired. Bring your outrage. Bring your trauma and your grief. Bring your joy and your hope, your loneliness and your love to this space, to this community. Together, we'll hold it all. Together, we'll sink into the difficult realities we're required to face in these strange times. And together, we'll breathe ourselves some acceptance and grace. Let's begin by singing together, "Come, come, whoever you are." And now I invite you into a time of meditation or prayer. And this is a prayer for protection by my colleague, the Reverend Elizabeth Nguyen. For Black, Indigenous, Muslim, Latina elected officials, for the residents of Washington, D.C., for each of us who has ever been handcuffed or tear gassed or afraid of police or white supremacists or our government, for each of us who is afraid every day for ourselves or our loved ones or our children or this country, may we be protected. May we be protected from generations of violence and hate, from pandemic and sickness and fear. May we be protected not because we have earned it, but because of the generous grace of justice and spirit. And may those of us who can be protectors protect, be pourers of tea for ourselves and others, builders of power of love for ourselves and others. Reminders to breathe and eat and fight and tend, to rest and risk so we may all be protected. And in our doubt and stress, may we rest in the air and the earth and the sky that have seen governments come and go, despots and haters come and go, that hold our bones and our breath with sacredness and survival. Words from the Senator-elect Reverend Raphael Warnock. Will we play political games while real people suffer? Or will we win righteous fights together, shoulder to shoulder? Will we seek to destroy one another or heed the call toward the common good, building together what Dr. King called the beloved community? May it be survival and justice. May it be shoulder to shoulder. May it be beloved community. This is our prayer. Amen. And blessed be. Let's rest in the silence together, and then we'll come out of the silence with another piece by Heidi Muller, Keep an Eye on the Moon. Those of you who are part of the community back in 2016 will remember that she played this song for us the Sunday after the election.
If you're wired and restless,
Our reading this morning comes from Wintering, The Power of Rest and Retreat in Difficult Times by Katherine May. We seem to be living in an age when we're bombarded with entreaties to be happy, but we're suffering from an avalanche of depression. We're urged to stop sweating the small stuff, yet we're chronically anxious. I often wonder if these are just normal feelings that become monstrous when they're denied. A great deal of life will always suck. There will be moments when we're riding high and moments when we can't bear to get out of bed. Both are normal. Both, in fact, require a little perspective. Sometimes the best response to our howls of anguish is the honest one. We need friends who wince along with our pain, who tolerate our gloom, and who allow us to be weak for a while when we're finding our feet again. We need people who acknowledge that we can't always hang on, that sometimes everything breaks. Short of that, we need to perform those functions for ourselves, to give ourselves a break when we need it, and to be kind, to find our own grit in our own time. In these crazy times, I rarely know how to answer the question, how are you doing? My pat answer is usually, I'm hanging in there. But if I'm being honest, I need to nuance that a little bit and say that sometimes I'm actually doing pretty well. I've been prioritizing my self-care strategies. The other night I was out for my walk, and actually just last night I was out for my walk, and I had an owl moment. It wasn't a great horned, but an owl hooted, and then I hooted back, and then it soared down almost close enough that I could have reached out to touch it. I think it was just a little barred owl, but it was pretty amazing. But here's the thing, when I'm doing well, when I'm feeling good, I almost feel guilty admitting it. Does anyone else have this issue? Like, given the circumstances, it's not okay to be okay? Never mind good? Anyway, so hanging in there becomes the default. Sometimes I'm struggling, but I'm more or less okay. I really am hanging in there. And sometimes I'm hanging on, but I'm hanging in there using my fingernails, and it feels like I'm at the edge and about to fall. And then there have been times when I have let go. Now, because of my job, you aren't going to hear much from me in those moments. Those are times when I turn to my support system and the self-care strategies that I've been investing in, and I check out for a while until I find my way back to solid ground. But I have those moments too, and I bet you do as well. And this is my supposition that this whole range is true for all of us, that however we answer the question, how we're doing, that in actuality, there's been a lot of ups and downs. Of all of the services that I've done since we went online, the one that got the biggest response was, I'm not okay. And I've been listening. I've been listening and walking with people, and what I hear is that, everybody's got different struggles, but we're all facing loss. We're all dealing with anxiety and uncertainty. I hear over and over again that things we normally would be able to handle in our personal lives are feeling really overwhelming. I hear a lot of gallows humor. I've had more than one person say to me, I don't know why I'm crying all the time. So I just want to say, in those moments when you have to let go, I hope you know you can reach out, and that the church community is here to be part of your support system. It really is okay that sometimes we're not okay. We're not having an abnormal reaction. We're having a normal reaction to abnormal events. And none are really more abnormal than the events of this last week. It doesn't matter whether we call it domestic terrorism or an attempted coup or an insurrection. What it was an attempt to overthrow our democratic government and corrupt our democratic process. It did have that football fan well, let's just say the drunk football fan vibe, we need to take it seriously because there were also people there with zip ties and flashbangs. The crowd was chanting, "Hang Mike Pence," and it was clearly their intent to take hostages, to hurt or even kill our elected representatives. Footage from the event is full of evidence of racism, anti-Semitism, Nazi sayings and symbols. It's unambivalent and it was horrible and horrifying. But we shouldn't be shocked. It's always been there. Racism is this country's original sin. That said, it is jarring and traumatizing to see it so openly and brazenly on display. We also need to take it seriously because 5 people died. It remains to be seen whether our institutions have enough strength and integrity to hold people accountable, including our president and other leaders who were complicit in enabling and supporting and cheering on these unconscionable and deplorable events. We do know it's not over yet. We have a ways to go, and folks have been clear that they see this as the start of something and not the end. In times like this, I experience in myself 2 competing impulses. On the one hand, there's a desire to act, to take a stand, to get out on the streets. And on the other hand, there's this impulse to hunker down, to keep myself and the people that I love safe. And in these moments when I don't know what to do, I've been trying to take my lead from activists and people of color. And without exception, they're recommending that second option. They're saying rest. They're saying hunker down. They're saying tend to yourself and your own well-being. So until and unless I hear that something different is needed, this is my work, I figure. To stay quiet, to pay attention, to process and integrate my feelings so that when there is a call to action, I can respond with energy and clarity and compassion. In other words, our work is to rest, retreat, chill, hibernate, heal, regroup, which of course is exactly how Katherine May describes wintering. Her book has gotten a lot of publicity as we headed into what everyone knew was going to be a tough winter. Her tough winter came earlier. She had a husband with appendicitis that turned into sepsis. She was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. She had to deal with job loss. She had a kid with depression who bailed out of school. And in the book, she chronicles all of the gifts she discovered when she stopped pretending, when she stopped trying to be productive, when she just stopped looking for a job or stopped forcing herself to be active and yielded to the winter, to the not okayness. And she found a plethora of gifts. Some of the gifts were found inside, curled up with tea and a book. Some gifts were found outside, walking on a frozen beach. She even worked up a practice of swimming in the winter sea. Once she got past the shock, she found gifts in that experience as well. Writing, getting into the sea on days when the temperature hovered around 0 was an act of defiance against our own woes. By doing a resilient thing, we felt more resilient. That circular process of being resilient and feeling resilient kept us afloat. Let's say that last bit again. The circular process of being resilient and feeling resilient kept us afloat. So if you are a reader, I encourage you to check out the book. But of course, the gifts that she found are different than the ones we will find if we're brave enough to winter. The point, though, is that there will be gifts. So how do we find them? We rest, we keep paying attention to self-care, but we also pay attention. I think it's important that we be present to these unpleasant realities, be present to what is. It's important that we not turn away or numb out. And then third, it's essential that we then integrate the feelings that come up in response to those realities. This is the trickiest bit. And there are plenty of strategies for doing this work of integration. There's the mindfulness practice where we notice the feeling physically. Where is it in my body? We accept it, we soften, we approach with curiosity, we breathe, and we uncover what it needs. We learn its gifts. I've also been listening and reading about Stoicism, which is an ancient philosophy. And the technical definition is the endurance of pain or hardship without the display of feelings and without complaint. But if you dig a little deeper, it looks kind of like mindfulness in that it's about being present to what is and choosing not to respond or react or feel feelings about things that we have no control over. So it's about differentiating what we can control and what we can't, and then choosing our response. I think sometimes people make the mistake of thinking that Stoicism is denial of what's painful or difficult, but it's not. It's facing it head on and then choosing a response that's skillful or useful in the moment. I'm also thinking about the work of Emily and Amelia Nagoski about burnout. Their book is Burnout, The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle. And they talk about how the reason we're all so tired and burnt out is because we're not letting ourselves feel the feelings. Feelings have a beginning, a middle, and an end, they say. But we're afraid of the process. We're afraid of the messy middle. And so we hold back from letting ourselves fully feel and move through the life cycle of the feeling. So burnout comes because we're stuffing our feelings instead of letting them run their course. Anyway, I could go on. There's no shortage of strategies or approaches, and everything is, different things are going to work for everybody. But the goal is the same for all of us, and that is integration. And integration is wholeness, a return to wholeness. So I'm talking about making a choice, not to hide from reality, not to hide parts of our experience of reality from ourselves, but to bring them into our active awareness. Not to hide parts of our experience of reality from others, but to be present to all of us. All of it, all of reality, all that's there. And bring it into our understanding of who we are and how we want to be in the world. And this is really what it means to be fully human. This is a time of deep winter. We are 11 months into the pandemic, and we have a few months left before widespread vaccination will make it safe for us to be together again. So it feels like a good moment to take stock of that particular horrible and horrific reality. We're not going to get sucked into the black hole of loss and fear because the end is in sight. I think it's a little safer. So let's integrate our feelings about the pandemic. As for the political situation, as I said, I think it's likely to get worse before it gets better. Experts believe that President Trump is a pathological narcissist, and the known pattern when a narcissist loses power includes extinction bursts, which means it's going to get worse. He's going to act out more. His followers are going to act out more. But these things are not going to amount to anything. They're going to continue to expose the ugliness of racism that's at the root of Trumpism. And our job is to protect people who have marginalized identities. And remember those concentric circles that we talk about where, there's the folks at the center who are most harmed by loss or grief or trauma. And then there's concentric circles moving out as we're one, less and less impacted. And we always want to make sure that support goes in and our venting, our asks for support goes out from those circles. So we need to protect our loved ones, which means checking in. And above all, we need to protect our spirits. one of my favorite people to follow in terms of understanding the mess that politics have been for the last bit is Elizabeth Cronus McLaughlin. And she wrote this week, "Do not feel like you have to be tuned into the news nonstop. Do not neglect your self-care strategies. Avoid, if you can, any destructive habits to numb yourself out. Instead, engage in what your body tells you you need. Sleep, good food, lots of water, silence, human connection, safely of course, and anything else right now that will nurture your body and soul. Claim it for yourself, selfishly, and for those you love. Your sanity and theirs depends on it." Now, why is it so important that we focus on taking care of ourselves, preserving our sanity and our humanity in these dark times? It's because there's a lot of work ahead. The inauguration is not the finish line, it's the start. Or maybe it's both a finish and a start, a milepost on a journey that's been millennia in the making with no end in sight. I found myself wondering if the strategies that support us in integrating uncomfortable feelings and realities into our personal selves will work when applied to our shared lives. I wonder if the answer to racism or the strategy for dealing with racism is mindfulness. Remember the service where I talked about the link between racism and trauma, the way we hold trauma in our bodies and how we need to heal and integrate that trauma? So it's sort of like mindfulness. We accept it. We accept that that racism is real and pervasive. We locate where it lives in our body and in our world. We breathe into it. We approach with curiosity, and then we do what is needed to change and grow and address this legacy that is America's original sin. Now, we have to do this as people, but more so, we have to press for examination and rehabilitation of our institutions. And that includes Unitarian Universalism. I wonder about approaching the partisan divide with stoicism. Just an absolute refusal to yield to anger, rage, hate, to default to that fight, flight, freeze, fawn mode. Can we choose to stay strong and clear and focus on what we have control over, which is primarily our own responses? Somebody said to me a few weeks ago, "We count on you Unitarians to be level-headed." Our community counts on us to be level-headed, but also they count on us to be kind and compassionate and generous. This is who we are, and it's who we will continue to be regardless of what comes. And I think about our imperiled planet in the face of climate change and how important it is that we find the strength and courage to feel our feelings all the way through, especially our fear, especially our grief, so that we don't get burned out and turn away from what's happening, so that we have the energy to keep doing all that we can. William Shakespeare said, "This is the winter of our discontent." But you know what? This is a winter of discouragement. It's a winter of disgust. It's a winter of discombobulation, of disconnection. Being human has never been easy, but it is especially hard this winter. But I have to say, in my lifetime, there hasn't been a moment yet, both so overwhelming and so ripe with potential. I can feel the change coming. I can feel the great turning. I have to remind myself, though, that plants that bloom too early get frost damage. Winter is a time to conserve energy, to protect what is life-giving. We need to go deep. We need to go slow. We need to cling to whatever in our life is most essential and most nourishing. We need to face into the cold and remember that we are strong and resilient. When Katherine May started swimming in that freezing ocean, she did it with a friend. It makes everything more possible to do it with a friend. We are braver and kinder and more level-headed and wiser together. So together, may we accept the invitation of these strange, cold days. And as we move forward, may it be shoulder to shoulder. May it be beloved community. So be it, and so may it be. Let's sing together the meditation on breathing.
Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out.
When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love.
Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out.
For closing words today, I bring you these Blessings in the Chaos by Jan Richardson. To all that is chaotic in you, let there come silence. Let there be a calming of the clamoring, a stilling of the voices that have laid their claim on you, that have made their home in you, that go with you even to the holy places, but will not let you rest, will not let you hear your life with wholeness or feel the grace that fashioned you. Let what distracts you cease. Let what divides you cease. Let there come an end to what diminishes and demeans, and let depart all that keeps you in its cage. Let there be an opening into the quiet that lies beneath the chaos, where you find the peace you did not think possible, and see what shimmers within the storm. And now our sung benediction. There is a love. And now let's blow out our chalices and say together the words to embody the flame. We extinguish this chalice that it might glow gently in our hearts. May it light our paths as we leave this place. May it guide our way until we are together again. Beloveds, sometimes there's nothing for it but to sink in to the chaos, to the dark. Rest. Take care of your precious, precious selves. Take care of each other. And know that we are here with and for one another in these times and in all times.